How would you define Black resistance in your own words?
Tenacity of our music, our culture, and activism continues in Washington, D.C. And our young people know how to take the social power of music, of the arts, right? And everything that our ancestors left before us from their sacrifice and use that to keep kicking down doors. What's up, bro? Ron Moulton, man. How you doing?
On, man? Darius Baxter.
Hey, nice meeting you,
I'm gonna fake for the camera. I've met you, Lord knows how many times.
Right.
But I can only imagine how many people you meet in a given day.
Yes.
Man, I'm in awe. Like, to think that I've made it to a place in my career where I can sit on a stage, or in this case, sit in the library with Ron Moulton, just blows my mind.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
No, appreciate you. Thank you for making the time, man.
It's a pleasure to be here with you, man.
Yeah, man.
It takes a village.
It does take a village, and I can shamelessly plug, we just started our new platform called The Village, and I would love if you can join it. You can just join us at thevillage.community.
Sure.
Yeah, this year, Good Projects, we're going to be investing $150,000 into Black leaders across Greater Washington, but at the same time, hopefully building a community, or like you said, a village. It's not a small thing, the foundation that you've laid for leaders like myself in this city. Like, how old am I now? I'm dating myself, but 29 now.
Right.
And I remember when you were probably not even first starting out, probably your third or fourth iteration already when you're doing work with the Peaceaholics.
Right.
Like, that was huge when I was coming up in high school, was looking out into the community, seeing these dudes that was really not only challenging sort of the government, but challenging the gangsters on the streets. Like, look, we're not gonna do this anymore.
Right.
Like, that was not something that was common at the time.
Nope.
But look how y'all have set that example for
Yes, sir.
a lot of the crime intervention work that's happening in the city, from Credible Messengers to the roving leaders to all of these different initiatives that have since come through that.
Yes, sir.
If the city won't give you flowers, I'm gonna give it to you now.
Appreciate it.
So I can talk about how you inspire me, but those that may not know, who inspired Ronald Moulton to do his work, and what continues to inspire you to this day?
So I've always been, even when Ron Moulton was a guy in the streets of Washington, D.C., I've always been the type of person who liked to help people. And, I went astray, even though my grandparents and mom at the time, they did everything they could to make sure I didn't need to be in the streets. And my father actually came in my life when I was in the streets, and was a blessing because he kept me going straight. But when I came home from prison after being locked up like 5 times, and finally I got a chance to sit down, which I needed. I got my GED, and I started taking African American history classes and Native American history classes, and just learned about the movement, the struggle, and my purpose. And when I came home, there was an organization by the name of Ceasefire Don't Smoke, the Brothers and Sisters that was being started. And I became one of the initial members that got it off the ground with Al Malik, Lump, Irk Tap, uptown on 14th Street. And Ceasefire was like really the model of gang intervention work. And we held guys accountable too, that we helped in our community. Like, we couldn't get you out of jail and then you come sell drugs in our community. We didn't tolerate it.
Yeah.
So that gave me the opportunity. I learned the power of determination also from that, even though I learned that in the street too, but I learned it doing it the right way with Ceasefire, because when the Million Man March was started and they said that it wasn't going to be 1 million Black men in Washington, I was a youth organizer for the Million Man March.
The original Million Man March?
Yeah, the original Million Man March. So I would go
You was
around
in the photo?
Yeah, I mean, well, I was one of the grassroots people who was working. I spoke at Howard University with the minister when they were talking to Howard students. I got to personally meet Kwame Ture with a group of young leaders, 5 of us having lunch with him. I got to meet Winnie Mandela. And most importantly, the day of the march, after a lot of organizing and being named one of the future youth leaders, I was outside when it was supposed to rain that day, and I saw the drums play, right? The libation that morning, and I saw the sun come out. And from that point on, I knew about my spiritual self, but all spirituality, and also about the power of determination when we come together as a people. So that was my foundation in doing the work. And from there to, being a promoter, big promoter in DC, Red Door Entertainment, which that's how I learned how to promote what I was doing.
Yeah. Who's your favorite go-go band in the city?
Oh, Backyard. Man.
Really?
The Ibex.
No
man.
shame.
The Ibex.
No
I'm uptown
shame.
boy. I mean, I've been on the south side for 20 years, but I'm uptown boy.
Yeah.
So Backyard.
Well, like even with the works that you were doing with the Peaceaholics, you really, everything that you've done from a community activism standpoint has always been directly adjacent to the go-go movement in the city. And I think we both can agree the go-go movement is really that summary of Black joy in this community. And it's safe to say that go-go is going to be here and be here for a long time. But one of the things that we don't talk enough about is Black trauma, right? Like, what role do you think Black trauma has played in the DC community up until this point?
One of the things I learned, I studied under some people who work with Martin Luther King. And one of the things that they taught me, this was before this term was even used in DC. And we started using it with Peaceaholics back maybe 14, 15 years ago, is that hurt people.
Every damn bit of day.
And then we added a little piece to it, heal people.
Every damn bit of day.
So you have a lot of people walking around in our communities who hurt. And then what they do is, if they're not healed, they inflict their pain on other people. So we have a lot of that going on. And then people are traumatized just from seeing the changes in their community and not feeling like they're going to be a part of it. Right? So there are a lot of different things that happen in our community in so many ways. And then we don't address it. And then we see the residue from all that. And that's what we're seeing right now, the residue from not addressing a lot of things with equity. You can't even talk about equality if you're not talking about equity. And, when Marion Barry was here, one thing he did, anybody who wanted to get off their butt and do something, they had an opportunity. Whether it's get a job, a house, whatever, right? And we're seeing a lot of that stuff come back now. But the trauma of seeing your people get pushed out, right? And you buying into the narrative that Black people don't have power no more, which we show is not true, with Don't Mute and other things that have been done in the city. It creates a hopelessness and despair that's traumatizing. And that's why it's important to educate people and let people know that they still have the power to bring about change. We've seen the recent things happen in this city that people didn't think was going to happen. It showed that we still have the power when we come together and use it. But that trauma, it mutes people and it takes away the power because people don't feel like they have power or don't even feel like they should even address the issues that affect them.
Yeah, certainly. I agree with you 100%.
So let me ask you a question.
You want to ask me a question?
Yes,
Ronald Moulton asked me a question?
What inspires you?
What inspires Ronald Moulton? Ronald Moulton inspires me and all the great leaders that have come before me. You guys have very clearly laid out a path for success for young leaders like myself to follow. And I'm sure you see those young dudes out there that's trying to make a way for themselves, or you like, oh, them old dudes, they doing it differently. But I think I was always one of the guys to subscribe to it, like follow the path of least resistance. And at the end of the day, you can learn from those that went before you so you don't have to make the same mistakes. What's taking you 30 years, I hope that it takes me 10.
Well, I tell you this, listen to some of those old guys who care, because a lot of times when I came up, when I try to fly, some of those old guys clip my wings.
Well, I get that too, man.
But it's a lot of old guys that walk away from trying to teach because people won't listen.
Certainly.
Right? And you gotta listen. Like I remember talking to Dick Gregory one time, and we were up at Highlands uptown. I was always getting conversations with him there. And he was talking, and I'm trying to get my point across to him. He's like, boy, will you shut the hell up? Just listen. I'm taking my time to talk to you, and you keep running your mouth. Just listen. And I had to think about this man got all this wisdom, and he taking the time to talk to little old me, and I keep running my mouth. So sometimes we got to humble ourselves and listen to people who got wisdom, because a lot of times people die with the wisdom and never share it.
Certainly.
And I would say this, that we learn from you all too, though. So let me ask you this. With you, what challenges do you see Black youth facing in DC, Black families facing in DC with the Good Project? I'm sure there's a lot.
There's a lot of challenges, but it comes down to something that you've already said. It's a sense of hopelessness. If we were in Wichita, Kansas, or Jackson, Mississippi, we might be having a different conversation. But we live truly in the land of opportunity. And I'm not talking about America's scale. I'm talking about the District of Columbia. You have billions and billions of dollars that flow through these streets in any given period of time. But there's too many young people, first and foremost, that are coming through public schools and charter school systems here in the city that by the time they hit the graduation stage, don't feel, whether they admit that to themselves or to anyone around them, don't feel equipped to take on the world. You have adults that are going to jobs every single day that are not getting any sense of fulfillment from it.
Mm-hmm.
Walking around sort of in this zombie state with this mentality. Whereas imagine a world if we all moved around with a growth mindset like that. Wow, I can own a building. Literally, I look out. I live in a building right here in Southwest. I live in this community, and I go on top of the roof sometimes, and I look out into the buildings, and be like, damn, like I'm gonna own me a couple of them one day. Like even when I started Good Projects, my hope was never, to be, this big time Forbes list CEO, top 20 nonprofit in the city. It was to serve people. But the vision that I did have was that if I work at this hard enough, that it'll continue to grow. And look where we are now. We're sitting across from Ronald Motley.
I tell you this, when we did our nonprofit, it was the same way. When the IRS asks you how much you expect to make, we put $25,000.
Yeah.
We wasn't expecting to make no money. We were doing it from the heart.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I learned from one of the civil rights leaders that worked with King, Bevel told me, he said, when you do the right things for the right reasons, you get the right results.
Yeah.
So when your heart is in it, it always pays off later, even though that's not your intentions.
Yeah.
Because you're doing what you love and it's coming from the heart.
Well, we live in a faster paced world. So it's like now, if you do it for the right reasons, you do it long enough, somebody's going to notice.
Yes.
And you ask about what the challenges young people face. One of the biggest ones is that they're impatient. Everybody wants it right
Say that
now.
again?
They impatient.
Oh my God. A young person said that?
They
Jesus.
they impatient, man. Everybody wants it. They want it now.
But it's social media. Social media has its good pros and cons, but everybody wants everything right now, and it's a detriment to our community. So I'm glad a young person understands that if you plant your roots in the ground, it's for a long-term win. When you don't plant roots in the ground, that little thing that you think is growing is just temporary. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to last the duration of time. So yeah, commend you on that.
No, I appreciate that. What challenge do you think the young people are facing? I know you do a lot of work around violence intervention.
So I, part of what you just said about people wanting things right away, I think social media has destroyed our young people. I think a lot of things that
not the music, just social media?
I'm about to get to all of it. So if you remember Peaceaholics, you remember we were doing protests back in 2006.
Yeah.
We were taking young people and educating them on how video games and music and everything was going to destroy our community and our culture. So you fast forward to 2022, and every song that our young people listen to is about drugs, music, guns, and killing, right? That's popular on the radio, and carjacking.
Yeah.
That's all they listen to, right? So then you take in impoverished areas in our community where a lot of the crime is happening, or where the people who participate in, and most of them live in single parent households, because 85% of those people in those areas are being raised most of the time without a father in the household, or they're being raised by one parent, right? So we know what the outcome of that is going to be normally, right? Without a village, because we had those things before, but we had a village. Then you take away all the things that we had as young people. I was telling somebody the other day, when we came up, yeah, we had raggedy schools and raggedy this and raggedy that. But guess what? Every day in Ballou Senior High School, there was an activity going on. Mm-hmm. Every day the young people had somewhere to stay out of harm's way before they went home. Now we got all these pretty buildings. How many activities are going on after school? Mm-hmm. Where's our children's safe haven? So I know they're putting a lot of stuff in the budget now to bring back those after school activities for our young people, which is very important, right? So these are the type of things, and accountability. I would say this, I can't leave this out. You can't have a young person carjack somebody tonight or this morning, and he's out tonight without any assessment, anything put in place, and letting them know, hey, if you do this again, we sitting your behind down.
Yeah.
You cannot feel like you're going to run crazy in these streets, and people who not from our community telling us that this is going to change something. So to me, we have too many people infusing their will on our children who not in our children's shoes and our family shoes. So the accountability that's gone with the love. So when I tell people it's not law and order, it's love and order.
Yeah, so that's interesting, because you said government can care, but the community can love.
Right.
Like, what did you mean by that?
Well, government, the way it's set up, is a bureaucracy.
Mhm.
And especially now where you have two different factions who go against each other and nobody ever comes in the middle. It's great to disagree. But when you disagree without a pure heart, that friction cannot create a diamond.
Yeah.
So right now we're not creating diamonds, we're creating dust that comes from the coal instead of a diamond that comes from it. So those are the things that I see, like, you know, in a way. But we can change that. And I believe in a lot of people in DC. I just think we got to come together and we got to push hard and we got to push fast because we don't have a lot of time. The city's changing, not just here, but in every urban city throughout the world. People of color are being pushed out. Even if you go to Africa, if you go to Nigeria, it's the same thing. I mean, if you go to Nigeria, Lagos, same thing. Yeah. The culture is being pushed out of the city. So this is something that we have to deal with. Yeah. All right. Let me ask you a question. What neighborhoods do you do the most work in?
Right here in Southwest.
Southwest.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
And I thank you guys for coming to visit us.
So,
man.
This you familiar with?
What a forgotten ward over here.
Okay. But, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Not a lot of people showing love to Ward 6, but right here in Southwest is the good zone.
Right.
So we have a good zone here in Southwest, stationed in the Southwest Public Housing Community. And then we have a good zone in Nairobi, Kenya, ironically, speaking about Africa.
Okay. And what do you do around the gardens, the green spaces, and how does that work in our community? How do you build relationships doing that?
Yeah, so the gardens were an interesting project that we undertook, Ronald. They were in 2021. There were a string of violent shootings in Southwest. Mm-hmm. And we have always sort of gone along the trend of sort of where DC is going as far as our violence intervention techniques.
Right.
Like we have people on the ground, we're in constant communication with the community leaders and the organizers. We're with the young men, supporting them. But there's always these variables. And so we said, okay, let's continue to do those things, but what if we try something sort of unique? And we had these spaces all throughout the community that were just like in every neighborhood in the city. You have empty lots that people either congregating in, doing Lord knows what, dropping trash in. And we know, as I'm sure you've continued to preach, that what did Deion say? When you look good, you feel good, you play good.
Yeah.
Put that in the context of community. When you go outside of your house and you see trash on the ground, how does that make you feel about yourself?
Right.
So when it comes down to time to take something from somebody, you feeling a lot less worse because you don't even love yourself.
Right.
And we can't tackle every issue in this neighborhood, but one of the things that was a very low lift for us to tackle, in partnership with the resident council leadership in the neighborhood, was turning blighted spaces into beautiful community gardens. Shout out our great partners at like Dreaming Out Loud in DC Central Kitchen.
He got a spot over in Ward 8.
Yeah, and they're joining us here in Ward 6.
Yeah. That's going to be the new Black Wall Street over there where I'm at.
Certainly, man. But it's been its own challenge. The community has rallied around this, really. They're excited. First, we converted the blighted spaces into gardens. But now the challenge is, it's not us versus the streets now. Now it's us versus the rats. Trying to make sure that we're keeping them up. And that's been sort of something that we've rallied around as a community, because now it's a fight that we could take on together.
So how did the project you had, the Good Project, help the community, the youth, identify what success is to them?
Man, that's a great question, Ronald. And I think I've always tried to surround myself with leaders that aren't just talking about the problems. Mm-hmm. It is through our actions that we make a difference. It is through our actions that we inspire. Mm-hmm. When a young person comes up to me, I've never once heard, "Oh my gosh, Mr. Darius, that speech you gave made me change my life." No, it's, "Oh my gosh, Mr. Darius, you taking time to coach our football team changed my life. Oh my gosh, Mr. Darius, you, without even asking, helping to support my family's funeral or sending food to our house late at night changed my life." Mm-hmm. At the time in 2021, we invested $300,000 in the activists, 10 activists around the city. That was about a third of our budget. We had about $1.2 million in funding that year, and $300,000 of which we invested in grassroots leaders, because we said, and this is sort of always what I've carried as a Black executive director, I'm not ignorant to the fact that if I didn't go to a Georgetown, if I could speak the King's English, put a good one page together, would good projects be where it is today? I think from a programming perspective, we would definitely have the impact. Will we have the notoriety and the funding? Probably not. The networks and systems that have been put in place allowed us to get there. But the thing is, I refuse to let us be an exception to the rule. Mm-hmm. All we have an opportunity to be with the lifetime of this organization, however long God keeps us around, is be an example. Mm-hmm. And hopefully a catalyst for change. So with the Black Justice Fund, exactly to what you're saying, in 2023, more than anything, I'm a believer, and I try to live with my faith in everything that I do. And the Bible calls us to be good tithers. I won't talk about tithing enough. I don't know the last time I even stepped foot in the church, but God continues to lead this path, and I know it's the same for a lot of young people. So this year, we're giving away 10% of our revenue, not our profit, but 10% of our revenue, and reinvesting it into community leaders and trusting them to be able to take those funds and do with it the best they can. And mind you, for most foundations, the IRS only calls you to invest 5%. So really trying to set a new standard for what giving and investing, and particularly Black leadership across Greater Washington looks like.
And I'll tell you why that's important. A lot of people don't know when I got with Check It, the gang Check It, and we started that, it was a mini grant from Far Southeast Collaborative that got us started.
Mm-hmm. How much was it for?
$10,000.
See? Makes a difference.
And I was running around in a raggedy car. And I had just lost everything because of politics, the 2010 politics. And I was riding around in a raggedy car. Many of them were homeless and everything. But that $10,000 gave us a spark and hope.
Yep.
And we started a fashion line and fashion shows and gave them something to do positive. And from that now, two of the leaders who started Check It own property with us over on MLK Avenue from that entity.
Sure.
So that took time. It took years. We're talking about from 2012 to now, but it started from a $10,000 mini grant. Yeah. It came from Far Southeast, and the Assistant Chief of Police, Diane Grooms, was one of our major supporters with helping Check. Instead of locking them up, helping us give them an option and space to do what's right.
Change, community level change. Of course, you got the Bill Gates of the world throwing billions of dollars at problems, or Elon Musk spending Lord knows how much to go to Mars. But real grassroots community change doesn't take billions of dollars. It just takes somebody willing to say, I'm willing to invest in this person.
Yeah.
And more often than not, it's not just with the cash. It's with the time. It's with the resources. Our most valuable asset.
It's with somebody giving you some space for 6 months like we got for free until we can pay the rent. So it's just different things. Yeah.
You're right. So what role do you think spaces like public libraries play in helping develop you in the city today?
Well, I think in my eyes, for instance, the DC public libraries have come a long way. They're getting very organic with it. I think there's been some revaluation and the community is being infused into the libraries more, which is very important, especially for our young people. Like I said, young people don't have a lot of positive things to do.
No.
They tend to create their own things if we don't create things for them. So I see the libraries doing more things for younger people. I see them doing more things and educating people who come to our city about our history, about our culture, right? And bringing us together. People who've been here, people who've come here, instead of us being against each other. I think the library plays a great role of educating people on the past, the present, and the future.
Certainly.
And I think that's something that the libraries are doing. This conversation that we having here today is a prime example. And changing with the times. MLK Library, the Go-Go exhibit, and the Marienberg exhibit, and all the preservation and archiving that's going on there and throughout the libraries is so important. So I think those roles are very, very important outside of, the content that we put in for our children to read and go back to educating themselves and reading again, which is part of the development of our community. So I'm very happy with DC Public Libraries and the changes that I've seen since I've been back paying attention, like over the last 4 years.
All right.
I think it's headed in the right direction.
Pop question. Mm-hmm. Favorite book you've read in the last 2 years?
My book.
Yeah.
My book.
Tell the people about your book.
Don't Mute Mo, which is...
Who's Mo?
That's me. I was the Mo before the Mo was in DC, before it was a word. It was called me Mo back in 1980, 85?
Are you making a claim right here today in these chairs that you are the original Mo?
I'm the original Mo, man.
Oh my God. You heard it right.
I'm the original Mo, man. So, everybody started calling me Mo because my last name is Mo 10.
Yeah. So Mo.
Yes, sir.
Outside of Mo, what do you want your impact to be when it's all said and done? Like, what is your legacy?
Well, my thing is, I feel like I've trained enough people. I mean, if you look at all the people doing the work in the city right now, a lot of them came through my program. Mm-hmm. Most of the major players in the gang intervention work used to work for me or were people who I mentored who were in the streets, or my partner mentor who was in the streets. So I feel like legacy-wise, part of that is done. Now, what I want to do is just deal with the equity issue. Like, keep pushing policy that empowers people with equity. Because if you don't own nothing, right, it's kind of hard to stay around. It's kind of hard to be relevant, right? So I want, we get these young people off the streets, make sure that they get equity and they know how to obtain equity. Like, one of the young people who was in the checker gang bought a house a year ago from HPAC program. They got all, like, it's a lot of programs in DC. As much as you talk bad about DC, you can't go nowhere in the country and find as many programs, right? So we gotta get people to believe in that they can really take advantage and do the things in this program. So my thing is about building equity. Of course, the Go-Go Museum that we're doing, institutionalizing that even more, and making so when I'm gone, the history of our music, our culture, and activism continues in Washington, D.C. And our young people know how to take the social power of music, of the arts, right? And everything that our ancestors left before us from their sacrifice and use that to keep kicking down doors.
Sir, man, that is the true definition of resistance.
Yes.
That is the true definition of resistance.
Yes.
How would you define Black resistance in your own words?
Tenacity, not giving up, because if you don't give up, we always win. The only time we lose is when we give up, right? We've been through so much. When we teach our young people and adults how to turn that pain, right, and use that to win, because after you go through that pain, there's nothing else that can hurt you, right?
Sure.
You see what I'm saying? Use that to kick doors down, not hurting your people, but helping your people. And to me, that's the resistance that I've always fought for, going back to the Million Man March, going back to when they first started attacking our music. Like, most people in this city don't know that the attack on our music and culture started when they took music out of DC public schools when the control board came, and they took the trades out the schools when the control board came. That was the attack on our music, culture, and the middle class in Washington, DC, right? But now we fought back. It's coming back in the schools, but now we got to make it cool for our children again. So with you, what would you like to leave in the Black community when you're gone? What mark would you like to leave?
We are actively working when it comes to the Southwest Good Zone to put ourselves out of business by the year 2030. Mm-hmm. Because if we're not working to that, what are we truly doing?
Pimping.
Mm-hmm. Pimping, for real. Like, and people will hear that mission and they'll be like, oh, that sounds cute. But really, when you're in our internal meetings, when you're in our planning sessions, when we're strategically planning for the years to come, everything that we do is always working towards how do we put ourselves out of business. If we're starting a program, you mentioned the gardens. Okay, we built the gardens and then turned them over to the community leadership. Right. We turned them over to the seniors. Like, hey, we've cleaned up these spaces for you. Now they're your spaces. Take them as you wait, and then we're here to support you.
Last question of the day. What does Black resistance look like to you?
Joy. Like, right now, more than anything, more than the anger, more than the protesting at that point in its current form, Black people need to understand that the greatest resistance that we have is our joy. Mm-hmm. And even in the face of prejudice, even in the face of racism, even in the face of violence, you cannot steal this joy, right? Because so many times as Black people, they don't put us in these environments. They don't put us in these hoods because they think that we can overcome them. They didn't give us the scraps because they thought we could turn it into soul food.
Right.
We didn't have the old beat down cars so we could turn them into the coolest thing on the block, throw a little rim on it, tint it out. Now everybody want the 60 Chevelle. Like, they didn't give that stuff to us because they thought we could make it cool. They didn't give us the old ripped jeans because we was gonna make it a style. But something had changed in that moment. And something has continued to sort of permeate through our culture, especially your young people, is that they think it's something new that they're gonna give us a bad hand. But what Black people have always found a way to do, even with the worst hand, to make it into something special.
I'll close out with this. Even with the rallies and the protests in the street, I just want my people to understand from all of that, don't get tricked from getting used to just finding something to be mad about. Because a lot of times people get mad, but they don't have no strategy, no action, and no plan to address the issues and get the outcomes we need. Every single thing I do, whether people realize it or not, I got a plan on getting the outcome that I want for my people.
Yep.
And that's how you get victories. I'll leave it there.
Ronald Moe. Thank you, man. It's been
Nice
a pleasure
talking with
having
you.
this conversation,
I
man.
look forward to working with you, man. We got to catch up again.
For sure. And thank you to the DC Public Libraries for inviting us to this conversation today.
Yes.
This is actually the last, I think they have one more left in this season, but I don't think there's any better conversation that's going to happen, man.
And I appreciate the opportunity too, DC Public Libraries. I mean, like I said, what I've watched you do before COVID and since COVID and during COVID, I think is great. Keep up the great work and keep on moving in the right direction. People need you. We need these spaces.